what would make this an extraordinary conversation for you today?
Well, I guess to kind of figure out if my goals are even realistic and what steps I really need to take to get there.
Sure. All right. Well, where are you now and where do you want to get to?
Okay, so I've only taken 4 practice tests. My highest score has been a 158. Um, I would like to get to a 170 by my January test, but I don't know if that's something that's realistic for my lifestyle because I work a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's if you're working a lot and you have a short timeline, then that's a big goal. I mean, I can't say whether you can definitely do it or not. It's a
Mhm.
question of how much time you put in where you can. And then there's also an element of aptitude, of course, and how effectively you study. So I can't give you a yes or no on that. I think it's going to be tough and it will require that you give it your all.
Mhm.
But alternatively, would you consider, if you had to, taking the LSAT a bit later and applying next cycle if you had to?
Well, I guess if I can, I'd like to take it in January and just see where I'm at. But if that score isn't something that I'm happy with, then retaking it at a later time to apply for another cycle.
So you're open to it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Then I think you've got your answer ultimately. I think give it your all, especially during the holidays. If you have time off of work, if you can squeeze in the time wherever you can and really give it your all, it's going to require a lot of you, but I'm not going to say it's not possible. I've seen this happen before, although it's extremely difficult.
Okay. With those students that you've seen it before, do they typically have a lot more time off?
Having more time off definitely makes it more likely. But I think the one commonality I see amongst these students is a complete obsession to mastering this exam and not letting any stone go unturned. So anything they have trouble with, anything they have difficulty with, they do not let it go. They are fierce in holding on to whatever understanding or glimmer of insight they need. And they just work. They give it their all.
Okay.
So what other questions do you have for me, Christina? Because I'm sure that you've been studying for a little while already. 158 is a pretty good score as it is, although I know you want to do better. So I gather that you've been studying for a little while.
Yeah, I was studying throughout September and October, but I didn't really have any guidance. I was really just mainly focusing on logic reasoning, not the games or the reading comprehension. And I kind of blew through a lot of logic reasoning sections and would go over them in review, but I didn't really learn any strategies or anything to actually improve on my logical reasoning. So I felt like I was just blowing through sections without actually improving a lot.
Yeah, that's a really common mistake. I think that students too often they want to dive into questions rather than taking the time to slow down and really analyze their mistakes. The review process is really where the gains come from. And so what I was saying about those students who give it their all and they're obsessive about this, that obsession extends to every misunderstanding, every mistake they make, even those so-called careless mistakes. If you don't see what led to them, then you'll be prone to making the same mistake again.
Okay. And let me see what other. I guess I was going to ask also, are the multi-sequencing games ones that students often struggle with? I'm in the logic games section now within your 2-month study plan, and I've been kind of moving through the different games and going back to reflect on old ones, so they're still fresh in my mind. And I found the multi-sequencing ones are a little bit difficult for me.
Yeah, they are harder. In fact, the schedule lays out the games in a general progression of difficulty. So it starts with the easiest ordering games, then slightly more difficult ordering, then the most difficult ordering, then same for grouping. Easy, medium, hard. Easy, medium, hard is the general progression within each game type. And so it's that's what you want to the order in which you want to do them. That makes sense. So yeah, it's going to get harder as you go. And so you might need to slow down. You might need to do more games of each type as you move along.
Okay. Um, Do you know if I were to apply the next cycle, would I be able to still use the recommendation letters that I had received to apply for this upcoming cycle? Or is that something I'd probably have to ask individual colleges?
Those would still be good, but you would need to write a new personal statement if you were reapplying to the same school.
Okay. I have anything else? Oh, so I noticed in the 2-month study guide, I think there were 12 tests total that I should be taking. And you said to leave back a few if I need to retake it. I blew through a lot of the logic, well, pretty much all of the logic reasoning sections in test 72 through 79, really. So the only newer tests that I really have would be tests 80 through 88. And then rather than that, I have pretty much all of the tests in the 60s booklet, except some of the games that I'm currently going through for your 2-month plan.
Good.
So,
Yeah. So you still have plenty available.
okay. So my question would be like, should I maybe use like 5 of the games in the 60s booklet and then the other 7 from the newer ones, or should I leave more of the newer ones back?
I wouldn't worry too much about the specifics, honestly. You just want to have a handful of recent exams in the 80s to use for a potential retake. So if you want to make half of them from the 60s and half of them from the 80s, and then you still have more in the 80s remaining for the future, that's fine. And keep in mind that if you decided to retake again in the spring or summer, you would have another couple of exams after that. You would have 89 and you would have 90 available as well. So the numbers will increase.
Okay. Um, how many hours a week, I guess, do you think I should be studying ideally, if I am to come within somewhere of my goal for
Yeah.
2 months?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I would typically recommend someone studying full time do 10 to 15 hours a week to maintain some sort of work life study balance. For you, given your goals, if you're really committed to this, I would try to squeeze out more. I also don't want you to run the risk of burnout though. So if you can carve out an extra hour in the morning or an extra hour after work before you go home, or you wake up early on the weekends to get a little extra time there, you could probably get up to 20, 25 hours, but it's going to require putting everything else aside. And during the holidays, that can be tough. So it's really going to require some understanding on the part of your friends and family.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I have a second job. So I think even though I would be a little tight on money, I think I'm going to ask if I can cut down to 1 day a week there, and just cut back on eating out instead so that I have an additional 5 hours that I would instead be at my job to study every week.
Yeah, well, I definitely appreciate the investment you're willing to make in this. I think that's a characteristic of the students who do the best on this exam. But I also want you to still have a little bit of time here and there as an outlet, just because I don't want you to burn out. I want you to have some time for relaxation because that'll actually help you in the long run.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely will keep that in mind. And I think I was going to ask something else. Oh, when I got like a 158 on the most recent prep test that I took, it was basically like I got minus 11 in the logic games, and that was because I ran out of time, because I really didn't know how to diagram, and then minus 9 in reading comprehension, minus 10 in logic reasoning. So essentially, I'm pretty much bad in all 3 areas in a very even way across the board. Is that common in students that are getting the score that I got, or is that going to make it more difficult for me to study and improve?
For where you're at right now, that's fairly common. But as you move up to higher scores, then what happens is typically students who do, let's say someone who gets a 170, they'll get -1 or perfect on logic games, and then -3 on each of the other sections. So as you get to the mid 160s, let's say, I would expect that games are going to get closer and closer to perfect, and reading comprehension will be a little bit tougher to improve upon significantly. And so I would actually suggest that you make logic games and logical reasoning your primary foci, plural of focuses, I guess. You make those your primary foci, and then reading comprehension, you still study that, of course, as well, but at the same time, you'll have slightly less improvement there, or at least that's to be expected. But really,
Okay.
games, focus on perfecting those because they are the most perfectible section.
Okay. All right. Well, I do not have any more questions. Thank you. I really appreciate all the feedback and information that you've given me.
Yeah, of course. What would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
Um, I think just hearing from you, since you're someone that has gotten a really good score and you're obviously a professional in this, that I do need to really put in a lot of time to get where I need to be, but also make time to breathe, and that the score that I'm at is being weak across all three areas is typical for 158, and also to focus on logic games and logic reasoning. I think all that is really helpful, and I got a lot out of it.
Great, fantastic. Well, please keep in touch and let me know if you need anything as you move forward. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.